They're gonna have to stand, don't they?
Excellent. Please take a seat so we can push off here.
We'll be facing everybody. I'll be looking at our ugly mugs. Hello, everybody.
My name is Marlene, and I am going to be narrating this site tour by train. Safety instructions before we get underway. When this train is in motion, we ask that you not be in motion yourselves. That means seated squarely in your seats. You'll be able to tell we're moving because you'll either hear 2 whistle blasts, that means we're going forward. 3 whistle blasts means we're moving backwards, which you will hear shortly. A single one means we've come to a full stop. At that time, you are more than welcome to get up, move around the touring coach, or at the end of our 2 leads here. Let me introduce our crew to you. I think Bill just went in just briefly, but our fireman today is Eric. Bill will be out here shortly. He is the engineer. We're not going anywhere without him. Sam is our grounds crewman. As soon as Bill gets back in here, we're going to start moving. And my first question always is, who on board loves trains? Good crowd. And who on board just happens to like with somebody who loves trains? Now you're wrong for the ride, whether you like it or not. Here comes Bill, our engineer. Yay, Bill. These guys work very hard. Ambient temperature inside that cab there can get to 130 degrees.
Oh, damn it.
But I do say it's kind of like big boys with big toys. Always a grin from ear to ear when they get to be engineers. So, in any respect. All right, Bill, we have introduced you. When you guys are ready, we're ready to go ourselves. We are being pushed back onto this turntable by our one operating steam locomotive we have here on site, our number 30. In 4 days' time, I was told she will be celebrating her 105th birthday. Wow. Built in 1913 by the American Locomotive Company at their Rogers Works in Patterson, New Jersey. One of the last ones to roll off that line. Also, that happens to be her original boiler. Very rare these days to have that sort of thing going on a locomotive that old. The turntable we have just backed upon originates from the Central Georgia, Columbus, Georgia facility, dates to 1907. Well, it's only about 50 feet long, and then over time steam locomotives got bigger, so by 1945 they had extended the turntable to 85 feet. Steam locomotives just got bigger over time. Anybody want to hazard a guess as how they powered this turntable in the early days?
Steam.
Iron hand, whoever said that, excuse me, is correct. Literally, a saddle roller bearing box balances tables so well, it only took 2 men to pivot this turntable and align those steam locomotives into the bays they needed to go into. For them, it was just like pushing a shopping cart. So I always say, think of the engineering ingenuity that went into all of that. Eventually, they did power the turntable by steam, then a gasoline engine. We operate ours today by electricity. One thing that hasn't changed over time, and that's Sam back there in that little cab, once we're aligned properly with the track we're about ready to back upon, he still does that by a very well-practiced eye. We'll undo the chain, and then radio wheel, and we'll move back down what was the incoming track for this roundhouse for those steam locomotives. The roundhouse itself was truly a roundhouse at one time. It was a full circle, 360 degrees, that had 40 bays to it, now 36 of which you could put a steam locomotive. A roundhouse was strictly for the operation and maintenance of steam locomotives, period. You would not have seen all this other rolling stock that we have parked under here today. When I say rolling stock, that's anything that moves down a track that is not a locomotive. Boxcars, cabooses, passenger coaches, etc. What you also largely see here is a 1926 rather ugly reinforced concrete extension of the roundhouse. Just like they had to extend the turntable to accommodate larger steam locomotives, they had to do that with the roundhouse as well. They knocked down one of the 1850s brick walls and pushed her out. The rest of it would have been this lovely old Savannah gray brick 1850s brick and wood constructed roundhouse. And under those smoke jacks that you see protruding from the ceiling, over here, particularly, were open trenches, like over here where we maintain our number 30. Trenches that were 3.5 feet deep. Those locomotives would come off the turntable, steaming, powering up, get under those smoke jacks. That's where all the exhaust from burning all the coal in the firebox, excess steam got vented out through the roof. And down below, while those locomotives are running, the workers would be under there doing inspections, minor repairs, maintaining her, servicing her. Get her back out onto this turntable. Pick up whatever they're going to haul for the day further out in the yard. Time is money in a busy rail yard. You kept things moving. And this one's a busy rail yard. Started building here in the 1840s on 5 acres of ground, some wooden structures, even a passenger depot, kind of where our parking lot is now. 18 acres. And that's when they started building the railroad shop buildings for the Savannah repair shops of the Central Georgia Railroad Company. And all the buildings behind the roundhouse, the tender frame shop, the machine shop, the blacksmith, the engine house, all the items date to that time period, made out of, again, this beautiful Savannah freight rig, constructed by slaves owned by the Central Georgia Railroad Company. There was such a thing as industrial slavery back then. They kept adding acreage until at their heyday they had 38 acres. Over 650 men working here at any given moment, over 1,000 employees on the payroll, and for 100 years the state of Georgia was the largest employer in the city of Savannah. And yes, this is the point where you scratch your heads and say, man, that was a short ride. Well, fortunately we are landlocked here. The city of Savannah sort of did us in the early 1970s. You see, there was once a roundhouse viaduct bridge that crossed Louisville Road, connected with the mainline viaduct that you see back there by the traffic lights. City of Savannah tore down the roundhouse viaduct because big semi-trucks couldn't get under the archways anymore. Louisville Road, major artery into downtown Savannah. A lot of them got stuck under there and let the air out of their tires get unstuck. City got disgusted with that, tore it down, making us landlocked here. We would love to take you on excursion tours, go off property, all the more so because this 1852 mainline viaduct was deemed by our engineers to still be structurally sound. You make something right the first time, it lasts forever. However, we have to come up with a whole lot of money to essentially add more track, rebuild the roundhouse viaduct. Last estimate cost was about $12 million or so. So I am still hoping for that millionaire in disguise on one of my tours who loves trains, wants to give us a generous donation. Perhaps one of you wins Powerball lottery. You have nothing better to do with your money. You love trains too. Write a check out to Coastal Heritage Society. We're going to chisel your names into that roundhouse viaduct and paint it any color you want. So we'll make it work. But we are landlocked for now. Last train to go on top of the mainline viaduct into the train sheds that you see across the street was the Nancy Hanks 2. That was in 1971. She was an express passenger service from the city of Atlanta to the city of Savannah. The red roof building over there, the train sheds behind it, that served as the main passenger depot here for nearly 100 years. 1876 until again the early 1970s. When the city repurposed those buildings to be the visitor center as well as the history museum, which Coastal Heritage Society also operates. They started building those buildings 16 years earlier. It took such a long time to complete because, of course, in the interim years you had the American Civil War. Whether you're Union or Confederate, railway operations go towards a war effort. Here, of course, to the Confederate war effort. You also may have heard it in your Civil War history about the Union General William Tecumseh Sherman. Captured the city of Atlanta, September of 1864. About mid-November, embarked upon his infamous March to the Sea. Savannah was the end point of that march. Because you want to destroy your enemy's infrastructure as much as possible during wartime, he instructed his troops to pull up all the wooden rail ties Central Georgia had laid, put them in a big pile, set them on fire. Once that fire got good and hot, pick up those long metal rails laid across the fire, to the point where the middle of those metal rails became red hot, flexible, just like in a blacksmith's forge. Pick them up by their ends, wrap them around tree trunks, telegraph poles, create what became known as Sherman's neckties. We do have a replica of that out by our workers' garden if you get a chance to look at it later. Prior to the Civil War, Central Georgia laid 229 miles of track. By the end of it, they only had about 90 miles of it left. Quickly rebuilt, all railroad companies boomed after the Civil War. Sherman kept marching this way very late in the war. Now we're talking December of 1864. Confederate troops that were here were heavily outnumbered. They escaped across the Savannah River into South Carolina and fight another day. City fathers heard what happened in Atlanta. Destroyed the rail yard, burned about a third of the city. They didn't want, you've all seen the film, right? Didn't want that happening here. Walked along this very road that fronts our property, Louisville Road. Surrendered the city to the Union troops. Quit the provision. They wouldn't come into downtown Savannah destroying the property there. So that is why, to this day, you see so many lovely antebellum pre-Civil War homes in downtown Savannah. We fortunately escaped the scourges of that war just by surrendering. We're all about preservation here, including self-preservation. Sherman ended up taking up residency in the Green Melbourne House off of Madison Square. From there, he issues a telegram to President Lincoln saying, "I beg to offer you, as a Christmas gift, the city of Savannah, along with 150 heavy guns, plenty of ammunition, and 25,000 bales of cotton." All right, I'm going to do a signal here, and you can help me if you like. So Sam knows we are about ready to move up this track once again. And the earthen mound behind it. Directly outside our doors, an actual Revolutionary War battle was fought. It occurred on October 9th, 1779. It was called the Siege of Savannah, and many historians later called it the second bloodiest hour in the American Revolution. It's when American, French, and Haitian troops, the largest contingent of black troops to fight in the American Revolution, tried to take that Spring Hill Redoubt, that earthen fort from the British. Unfortunately, their attempt failed miserably. Less than an hour's time, about 800 men lay on the ground, and only a handful of those were British casualties. Georgia remained the last of the original 13 colonies to stay in British hands until nearly the conclusion of the American Revolution. At 12:30 today and at 2:30 later, we also have our battlefield program that begins in the History Museum across the street. We call it the Loyalist and Liberty Program. Our uniformed interpreters talk about the build-up to the battle. Then they enlist you in the militia, have you be our standard bearer, march you out on that, tell you about how the battle was actually engaged, and then with a firing officer musket, attempt to take that redoubt one more time from the British. We're now going to back down, once we do another little spin, back down a much longer lead into one of the bays of a 12-bay building known as the Coach and Paint Shop. The Central Georgia ran was in 1956. Diesel just makes more economical sense than steam. For one thing, startup time for a steam locomotive can be anywhere from 3 to 8 hours, depending on the size of that locomotive. Our number 30 is just a tiny little locomotive, but the guys do have to come in here at least 3.5 hours ahead of time to get her ready for the day, get her up to full steam. But with diesel, your startup time generally is only about 20 minutes or so. With diesel, you also have interchangeable parts. You just call up the manufacturer and they will send the part that you need in a box in a few days, weeks, or time. I call it the Amazon Prime of its day. But here, for the steam locomotives, those are custom-made parts for that particular locomotive. Often had to be hand-forged by a blacksmith. Took some time to do it. Also with diesel, you cut your cabin crew in half. You no longer need a fireman stoking a firebox anymore. You just need an engineer to operate the diesel locomotive. So it was labor savings for the railroad industry as well. Are we ready to go? On the lead into one of those bays of the paint shop. Repair shops for most of its history for the central Georgia. They built from scratch, repaired, maintained all types of rolling stock. When I say rolling stock, that's anything that moves down a track that's not a locomotive, boxcar, cabooses, passenger coaches, etc. And they even built their own locomotives here for about a 10-year period prior to the Civil War. I would call it the soup to nuts operation. They did everything here. As we make this bend, you will also see the remnants of the roundhouse diagram. wouldn't hear of that. Also, that's the grandfather, Juliet Gordon Lowe, of that family in Savannah. When his job as mayor, gathered up some investors and created and had chartered in 1833 the Central Georgia Railway and Canal Company. The road out in the field doesn't have much value. It's when it gets into port and a factor. You see factors rocks, a walk by River Street determines the value of that cotton and then gets it on those ships for export. Full stop, more than welcome to our 1.5 feet of reinforced concrete where they had upheld by 60 pillars. And down below, eventually, the Central Georgia put in a diesel fuel lab, an upholstery and electrical shops, as well as a printing press. Again, such a big operation, they did all their own printing right here on premises. Whether that was the company magazine or the tickets they'd hand out for passengers across the way. Also, this building sits on the footprints of a building that existed here in 1907. They had to rebuild in 1924 because they had a major industrial accident here in the paint shop in the previous year. Common practice at that time to remove paint with acetylene torches, blow torches. Kind of see where this is going. One poor worker didn't stamp out his embers well enough one evening. Wooden boxcar caught on fire. Next thing you know, this place had burned to the ground at a cost of $1.1 million in damages, probably close to $13 million plus in today's dollars. Fortunately, 20s, good revenue-making decade for all railroad companies. They did fairly quickly rebuild within 18 months' time, using all the modern construction material available then. But as a precaution, put a firewall and 2 automatic fire doors between the coach portion and the paint portion of the coach and paint shop. They weren't going to let that happen again. Off to my right here, towards the back of the building, the only 2 existing Savannah streetcars that we are aware of. We did have an electric light rail system here from 1891 to 1947, when these Bernie cars were taken out of service, sold at public auction. The one towards the back of the building ended up being a oyster barbecue hut placed out on Whitmarsh Island. The one closer in, purchased by a private citizen to be a playhouse for their children. Needless to say, the playhouse did get the rougher treatment of the 2. We hope someday to restore them to show condition. Who knows, maybe operating condition. Rails of the streetcars still exist underneath the concrete of the streets downtown. That's just going to take a lot more money, a lot more initiative on behalf of our city government to get up and running. Also here you see one of 3 freight elevators that went to the lower floor from the paint shop. You also see our scale test car, our newest acquisition we got out of a CSX yard. Just like a big semi-trucks off an interstate highway go into a weigh station to be weighed, similarly freight rail cars had to as well. Determine their tonnage and the miles they were going to be using, what they were going to charge them, but also to make sure they weren't too heavy so they wouldn't damage the track they were about to go on. Rather hard task for our guys to do this because they had to remove 40,000 pounds worth of individual 50-pound weights from those little portholes on the side, one by one, place them onto pallets. Took them about 2 days to finish. They were pretty sore by the end of it, but they got it done. That's our newest acquisition. One last thing before we put out of this bay, you may have also noticed the graffiti on the walls. This site was abandoned by Southern Railway in 1963. Word got out, became the underground party zone, gathering place for all the hippies in the 60s and 70s and such. When we got inside, we cleaned up a little bit of language, but not much. I like to remind people we were in peace and love back then. But we left it on the walls, part of the history of this building. But graffiti also these days is recognized more and more as a genuine art form. So another good reason to leave it there. All right, we're going to get underway, pull out of this bay, get some air moving in here. So if you'd all kindly return to your seats, and Bill, whenever you're ready there, in front of these bays, they would load the rolling stock that needed to be worked on onto the transfer table, kind of like a Xerox machine, but anyway, align it with the bay it needed to go into, and then by sheer brute force, chain tackle, pull it off that transfer table onto the track of the individual bays. We don't want to build up too much momentum or that rolling stock's going to start rolling on top of you. Where you see the orange caboose, that was a stripping yard. If they had really got something out, started from scratch, that was done there. You see the against the walls, that was a carpentry shop. Woodworking done there. Became less important over time as everything went more and more towards metal. In 1925, ready to go by a coal-fired boiler. Once daylight hit, they would start up that steam engine and a rotating line shaft that went out either end of the engine house. And through a series of belts and pulleys, powered all the machinery in the blacksmith next door, the machine shop next to that, as well as 3 carpentry shops on the other side of the engine house. All the machinery here powered by steam until electricity was installed in the early 1900s as the alternate power source. You're burning all that coal back there in the engine house. So you got to get rid of all the exhaust it produces. So it went out through underground tunnels up through this 125-foot smokestack. If you look at the top of the smokestack, you'll notice that the brick is slightly discolored from the rest of the smokestack. We had to rebuild it when we came on site. You see this old Savannah gray brick hand-fashioned by these black masons back in the 1850s. That brick became very valuable over time. Since Southern Railway decided not to upgrade to handle diesel locomotives here, already done that at their hubs, they didn't want to do that here, they started dismantling this place. That transfer table I talked about earlier, that was sold for scrap metal. But that old Savannah gray brick was going for $5 to $15 a brick at that time. The formula sort of got lost, they never could quite recreate it, became sort of a lost art. So the reason why you don't see the 1850s brick half of this roundhouse anymore is because Southern Railway salvaged all that brick off. Then they got greedy and they started taking it off the top of the smokestack as well. But the shrinking smokestack did save this place from further demolition. That's when the preservation folks downtown took notice. They called up the city officials, asked them what the heck was going on in this yard. Next thing you know, city officials found the legal means by which to reclaim this property contained in the original 1833 chart for the Central Georgia Railway and Canal Company. Clause in there said that this property would be on loan by the city to any operating railroad company. Southern Railway ceased operations in 1963 through a rather complicated legal process, but in the end, the city was to reclaim this property and claim it as their own. So the city does own this property. Coastal Heritage Society does operate and maintain it for them. This museum as well as 4 other local museums. We're a private nonprofit organization. We receive no federal or state funding whatsoever. A little bit from the local government, but that's strictly for operation and maintenance. Most of our revenue comes from donations and grants and hosting certain events here, like weddings and such, but also through admissions. A good portion of your admission dollar goes directly towards restoration. By doing so, you are helping us preserve a little piece of railroad history just by being here today, and we are very, very grateful for that. If you wish to help us further, we are doing a track match challenge. A gentleman is willing to beat us dollar for dollar up to $20,000 to add more track here, and they switch so that when we do these site tours by train, it's a more continuous figure-8 loop. Kids get less bored, there's more movement. Also with the new switch, we can load disabled folks by the storehouse instead of having them deal with that staircase there. If you want to help us in that endeavor, we do have donation boxes here on this coach as well as in our gift shop as well. Thank you all for coming today, but wait until you hear that single whistle blast before you disembark from this coach. Thank you all for coming. Stay cool.